In the news this week, they're young, they're angry. Uni students and protesters demanded action on climate change.
WA gets a dud when it comes to broadband speed, but experts say there's more at stake. The demands of building Row 8 and 9 is growing, according to Melville Mayor, but will it be built?
And WP features part 1 of the climate change interview series.
That's coming up.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Lung and Danielle Staniskov.
Good evening. As the fight for climate justice continues, university students flooded the CBD with feisty signs and catchy chants protesting against the government's climate inaction. How many more protests will it take before the federal government commits to a better future? Taylor Hanna has the details.
According to the 2019 National Union of Students Student Values Survey, climate change is the #1 political issue on students' minds. Hundreds of university students gathered to make a statement of not backing down against this fight.
Absolutely, climate inaction can be overwhelming, but taking action is immensely relieving if you're feeling anxious. So I think taking action is the best thing you can do.
This one rally is going to end climate change, but the only thing that is going to end climate change is a mass action and civil disobedience that is going to put pressure on the government and on these companies and say we're actually not going to let you get away with it.
Inaction and complacency from the government is no longer an option. Students and young people are demanding urgent climate action for their futures.
We can take action out on the streets like we are today, and we're also taking action in our offices, in our homes, changing policy, changing the way things work, making sure that, if the politicians aren't going to listen to us, we're going to kick up a stink, and they better watch out because there's people in this crowd that could be the next leaders of our country.
Labor MP Josh Wilson acknowledged university students and communities across Australia wanting action on climate change, but said the federal government has been an abject failure in terms of settling on a 21st century energy policy.
We have a policy that does two things. It modernises our power generation and our grid and our storage opportunities, and that in turn will deliver both lower emissions, falling emissions, higher investment in renewable energy and cheaper prices for households.
Taylor Hanna, WAMN News.
The National Broadband Network faces another wave of criticism this week after the Australian Competition and Consumer Protection Report shows WA is getting the highest share of broadband underperformance in Australia. Expert warns the failures will risk WA's future jobs and create online security problems. Helene Fung reports.
WA has the worst broadband in the country, with the highest proportion of underperforming services among all the states, according to an ACCC report measuring Broadband Australia. Fremantle MP Josh Wilson said that WA drew the short straw because of the NBN design, and that will be severely disadvantaged as the result.
And we can't afford to be at that kind of disadvantage. It will hold people back economically. It'll mean that we have less ability to access important services when it comes to health and education and banking and those sorts of things.
Mr Wilson also warned that the rollout of 5G mobile internet technology may render the NBN obsolete.
That because the NBN has been delivered so poorly, that mobile technology will compete with low quality line broadband. That should not be the case, but it may happen.
Murdoch University Politics and Policy Senior Lecturer Ian Cook said that the poor execution and a mix of different technologies used in the NBN design means more cybersecurity vulnerabilities.
If we can't make online world secure, and if jobs are increasingly moving online, we have a paradox, we have a problem. That is, we're moving people into a less secure space, asking them to do things that are expose them more.
Helene Fung, WAMN News.
Labor leader Anthony Albanese visited Perth this week, listening and addressing the needs of WA. Mr Albanese discussed tourism options, creating jobs and the economy, commenting on the disappointing RBA governor's downgrading of Australia's growth by 0.25% below trend.
We have low consumer demand, with just last week the weakest retail trade figures since the 1990s. We see interest rates at just 1%, lower than they've ever been in our history. We see underemployment. We see mortgage stress at record levels. The government have doubled the debt since they've been in office, and they don't have a plan for growth.
Mr Albanese will be back in Perth in 2 weeks' time for the WA Labor Conference.
The Western Australia Joint Anti-Child Exploitation Team combats national and international online exploitation of children and has charged a 31-year-old man after their investigations. The AFP received information about an online user allegedly uploading child exploitation material and then identified the Perth man as the account user. During a search warrant, police seized a hard drive containing child exploitation material, several other devices to be further examined, and a small quantity of methamphetamines with 2 glass pipes. The man was arrested and faced charges in the Perth Magistrates Court, including counts of possession of child exploitation material, methamphetamine and drug paraphernalia.
The topic of Row 8 and 9 remains the focus as the federal government continues to emphasise the money is ready to build the controversial highway project. Federal Minister Alan Tudge says the $1.2 billion are available to WA to allow the construction of Row 8. Liberal MP Ben Morton also made his case in front of the press, but WA Minister for Transport Rita Safioti rejected the suggestions.
I think mostly of the road trauma. I think of the pollution is generated. So it's the safety for the health of the community of Melville, but also it's providing safety against the attack on their amenity and the cost of their home, because turning Leach Highway into a de facto freeway is going to have a massive impact on segregating our community.
The manhunt for 2 murder suspects have concluded in Canada this week following a discovered 2 male bodies. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have reportedly found the bodies after the items linked to the suspects were found near a river. It's alleged 19-year-old Cam McLeod and 18-year-old Bryce Majelski killed an Australian man, his American girlfriend and a biology professor, which sparked a nationwide manhunt. Hong Kong protesters carried out another demonstration at the international airport, which lasted for 3 days. The occupation began after days of violent brawls between protesters and tried members. The Hong Kong police have also been accused of brutality against demonstrators. The protesters continued their demand for universal suffrage and their complete withdrawal of the extradition bill.
NASA's Curiosity rover has made so many significant discoveries since touching down Mars 7 years ago. The rover has travelled 21 kilometres to its current location, and is on mission just having drilled its 22nd sample from the planet's surface. Discoveries of rock made of dozens of hardened sediment layers suggests a once dynamic environment with either wind or flowing water shaping this area. NASA says the rover has a few more years of life left before its power system downgrades, but careful budgeting of its power will allow Curious rover to keep roaming the planet.
And that's our news for this week. We have the latest on our website and Facebook page.
Until next Sunday after 8, thanks for company. Good evening.
Good night.